Good morning, Senator Carson. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to ED&A. We're going to open up the hearing on House Bill 1188, and I'll recognize Rep. Grote to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Chair Pearl. House Bill 188 was submitted because in statute, it required that APRNs, RNs, LNPs, and LNAs have the ability to read and write in the English language. And because LNAs don't necessarily may be coming from a culture that English is not their primary language, it was a concern that this may be perceived as a barrier, and because that really wasn't defined what that meant. I know myself as someone whose English is their second language. Can be an intimidating statement. So I wanted to pull LNAs from that requirement and have it so that they have a sufficient aptitude in the English language as adopted by rules. And that was amenable to OPLC. And at the same time, OPLC also brought this part of the statute up to date in regarding to the responsibilities of OPLC for licensing and where the responsibility for boards lie with meeting the criteria. So that is essentially what this bill's about.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? No, you're just getting? All right. So essentially then, make sure I have my head around what you're proposing is that we're moving the OPLC would put into rules how they would define sufficient aptitude.
That's right, and one of them is, of course, passing the test that LNAs have to pass, which is in English.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
But we would leave that up to them to decide what sufficient aptitude was.
Correct.
Okay. All right. No further questions? All right. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Carrie Dutton. Good morning. Welcome to ED&A.
Thank you. Good morning.
Turn your so it goes red. There you go. I know it's backwards.
You're
Red
right.
is on, actually.
Good morning. Carrie Dutton from LNA Health Careers. I own and operate the largest LNA training school in New Hampshire, and really excited about this opportunity to attract more candidates to join the field. Currently, we turn away a lot of students who don't meet the standardized tests that we use for English, reading, writing, and speaking. And we'll be able to change and adapt our tests that they feel is maybe too high a level because of the interpretation. And then we'll be able to attract through marketing people who don't listen to English radio, read English newspapers, and attract a broader audience. When we turn people away now, we do send them to English as a second language courses, but they're able to find other jobs and, typically don't come back. We lose them. So this way we can capture them right from the time of their interest, get them into training, and get them to the skill and competency level they need to be at to pass the competency test.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions? So I guess I would ask that, what would you feel a sufficient aptitude for English would be?
Yes, so, we want to make sure that they understand dementia, non-communicative body language and what that means, medical terminology in that language, and enough for the employer setting that they plan to go work with. So communication, understanding the medical language that they would be reading, knowing what that means. Our testing is hands-on skills and also a written test. But they're often not taught certain words in an ESL course that we use in the medical language and in everyday, understanding, like for example, that walking can mean ambulation, ambulatory, ambulating, just all those different things. We can focus on that and more of like work related communication.
So we'd have to make sure that in the rulemaking, we had requirements that they understood all of the medical-related terms in English.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
No questions? All right, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate your testimony. I have nobody else signed up. Anybody else want to testify on House Bill 1188 before I close the hearing? All right, seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill 1188. What is the will of the committee here? We are missing 2 members, so anything that we exec could not go on consent. Do you want to, Kevin, do you know if they are coming?
Senator Perkins spoke with Flynn this morning from Phoenix, so she's on her way from Boston. And Senator Ultra was getting stitched up. So
So-
she said she was also.
So there's a chance they'll be here a little bit later?
Yes.
All right.
I was told not too late.
Fair enough. All right, I think it's probably best if we just recess for 5 minutes and then we'll take up our next hearing. All right, we'll be in recess until 9:15. All right, we are at 9:15. We're going to open the hearing on House Bill 1410, and I will recognize Representative Lekis to introduce. Good morning and welcome to EDNA.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Representative Tony Lekis, representing the district of Hillsborough 38, which are the towns of Hudson and Litchfield. House Bill 1410 does two kind of different general things. One is some cleanup that things that were missed in the changes that occurred last year in licensing. There are places where, I mean, I can go through this in detail if you want.
Please.
Okay, so on page 1, line 2, there's a place where it talks about licensing the Board of Nursing, and it's just, it lists RNs, but just adds APRNs to that. And in the powers and duties of the board, further down, establish eligibility criteria for licensure and renewal of licensure, instead of actually examining the licenses, because the way things have changed is the actual issuing of the licenses, the power was granted to the office, but the criteria for doing so would be set by the board through rulemaking. And there's, and that's in the middle there. If you look at the bottom, starting line 28 of page 1, there's the removal of the establish and collect fees. That was moved to the office and removed from all the boards. I mean, this change should have been made last year, but it wasn't. On the next page, there's the rest of that and then some renumbering. If we move to page 3, there's some language that's added starting at line 14 concerning federal registration of nursing assistants. And that's actually been going on. The office, OPLC, I guess, felt that it's better to have it explicitly in here rather than just assuming that's something they should be doing. There's a federal registry that exists in addition to the licensing. And let's see, and then further down on here, like at line 24 and 25.
Representative, can I ask
Sure.
a question right there?
Yeah.
So the federal registry, is it the applicant's duty to fill that in, or is that something OPLC does?
I believe that they actually sign up for doing that. You know, the applicants have to do it, and then the licensing is separate. But there's somebody here from OPLC that can give a better, answer to the details.
All right, Doug, maybe you can answer that when you come up.
Yeah, and I also understand that there's some consideration of possibly combining the two, so it's one step that they believe they can do under rules. But again, Doug can give you the details on that.
Thank you.
Right. If you look at line 23 on that page, they move the authority for criminal background check, again for the board of the office, and 25, they're moving, it moves the requirement to submit the application and fees to the, it ends up going to the office rather than the board. Similarly, down on 28, there's a number of changes that go from board to office because there was administrative functions that were moved to the office from the board last year. Okay. The other thing that's in here is it eliminates the licensing, or it's actually registration, not licensing, of medical technicians. And the reason that is being done is that whole thing isn't working. The problem, I mean, medical technicians are people who are not otherwise licensed, but may have access to either drugs and or patients. And it could be, cleaning staff or a wide range of other people that work in the medical field. And the problem that OPLC has had is that I guess they don't see themselves as a profession. They haven't been able to get anybody, well, one person in all the time this has been in place was willing to serve on the board. So the board has never held a quorum. The board has, as a result, has never been able to do any rulemaking. And without the board doing rulemaking, the Office of OPLC can't do anything. I mean, they get requests for registration, they can't act on them. They get complaints, and unless it's something which appears to be, a criminal offense, which they can refer to law enforcement, they can't do anything about it because they have with no rules, there's no definition of what is or is not okay, what's the process, any of that. And they've made, a number of attempts to recruit people. They got one person, and their term ended, I think, sometime last winter. So currently there's nobody on the board, and they can't get anybody to serve on the board. I mean, if it's believed that there is a problem that needs to be dealt with, I mean, we'll need to come up with some different solution. But having a registration board isn't working, and I don't see any way it's going to work. When we got this bill, we did kick around some ideas, didn't come up with anything, at least within the time of the legislative process, that, that we thought would work. And so, if people want to study that and figure out what to do, that might make sense. But, and leaving this in place when it doesn't work and it doesn't do anything, I think leaves an impression that there's some protection which really does not exist. And it puts OPLC in a difficult situation because they get people reporting on things that might be a problem, and people looking for registration, but they just can't do anything. And I'll be glad to answer questions, but that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Representative. So the remainder of the lines 15 through 20 on page 4, how would you characterize them as just cleanup language?
Yep, that's cleanup. 16 is collection expenditure of funds that move to the office. 17, fees and charges. There's a lot of things, administrative parts that move to the office, license renewal, license reinstatement, and all of that. I mean, the Board of Nursing sets the rules on how all that should work, but, the office turns the crank running the machinery of implementing the rules then.
Thank you. Senator Carson, I bet, has a question.
I've got a couple.
Sure.
Good morning, Representative.
Good morning.
I'm sorry, gotta turn the microphone on. I'd like to draw your attention to, on the first page of the bill.
Yep.
Beginning on line 2, I see where the APRN has been added, but it says, member shall be a resident of this state. So is this saying that if somebody lives in Vermont and wants to work as an APRN or RN, they cannot practice in the state of New Hampshire because they don't live here?
That's not correct. This is a matter of who can be a member of the board. It requires the members of the Board of Nursing to be residents of the state, but it does not require people to be a resident to practice here.
So, so you can have someone who doesn't live in the state of New Hampshire, has practiced for, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 years, but because they don't live here, they cannot be a member of a board.
That's correct, and that's existing language. That's been there. I mean, that's a policy decision which, could be changed, but that's not something new here. I think when this was originally put in place, it's possible they didn't worry about APRNs because they were viewed as RNs as well and covered, but I guess that's not necessarily the case. And so just to make it clear that APRNs are covered, that was added. If there's a policy decision to change that, then that could happen, but it's not, this bill doesn't do that.
Okay. Secondly.
Further question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 4, dealing with the repeals, on lines 12, 13, and 14, I have some difficulty with that. I was here when that board was created because of what had happened at Exeter Hospital, and that we had no way to determine who was here, who was practicing. Many of these folks were travelers. And they would travel from state to state, or they would they'd work for an employment agency. But medical technicians, I mean, in most states, they are licensed, they are regulated. They do a variety of different jobs. And they really are separated out into separate boards. You can get a degree in medical technology, you work in a hospital laboratory, and you're dealing with some very sensitive testing, materials, machines. People go to school for 4 years in order to qualify, and they have to take national exams as well as state exams. So I can't really speak to why they can't get the board up and running. I think that's an issue with OPLC, that perhaps they've been busy doing all these other things that perhaps this board just kind of slipped under the radar. But I just have a lot of difficulty in just getting rid of it. It is very important. And I'm disappointed to see that they can't seem to get people, there hasn't been an emphasis on doing this.
Well, first of all, there's a variety of medical technicians, and there's a range of them that are licensed, do have their own license. And I mean, there's medical imaging, and I don't even know, I mean, person from OPLC could give you the list, but they're split out into different groups, as you said, in other states. They are separately licensed, they have boards that function, and all of that is in place. What's being called here is medical technicians. If you look at the statute, it's people who are not otherwise licensed. So they aren't required to have I mean, so I don't know if other states license people that clean the ER or the OR, or, I mean, that's not the only thing that are medical technicians, but the ones that, generally the ones that take a lot of education and are actually a profession, they are licensed, but it's not under this. So it's not like it's everybody who's got a title of medical technician is not going to be licensed or registered. These are just the ones that aren't licensed in any other way. And, Mr. Osterhout could probably give you more details as to which ones currently are licensed under other boards.
Okay, thank you very much, Representative.
Further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, Representative, we appreciate your
Thank you.
testimony. Doug, you're the next one on my list. Even though you didn't check you wanted to speak, I just checked the speaking spot for you.
Surprise.
Good morning, Douglas Osterhout, Office of Professional Licensure and Certification. To answer that first question that came up before, so when the students pass their exams, we are notified and then we place individuals on a federal registry, but that is separate and distinct from license. So you can be on the registry but not be licensed in the state. Just to answer that question, that is something we do. There's, the MedTech thing is interesting. I think what Representative Lekis was talking about too is, I don't know the specifics of, I can't off the top of my head tell you where all the other med techs are licensed and under what boards. They could be under Board of Nursing, they could be under dentists, there could be a number of places they're licensed. But one of the problems is we just don't have applicants. The governor's office does the appointments for our boards, and we're just not seeing the applicants because people don't typically identify as med techs. There'll be a nurse who also has their med tech license, or there'll be a dentist who, or that sort of structure. So we do come across challenges where we'll have applications or where we might have to do a hearing under 332G. So there's some kind of criminal background check, but we don't have a board to bring that in front of. I think the expectation, this wasn't an ask of the OPLC, but I think the understanding was that if we erase the med tech license piece, is individuals would either be covered by their other license or they would be covered by that sort of employee-employer relationship. We put that onus on the business owner or the hospital or whomever to sort of relegate and oversee that individual. So it wouldn't be from that licensing perspective. But even if we had a complaint come into us right now, we have no one to hear that complaint. As far as I know, I think as long as I've been with the OPLC, we've only had one board member that I'm aware of, and that individual was a holdover for a while and stopped being on the board, I want to say sometime last winter. So it's been months and months where we've had absolutely nobody. Never been able to meet quorum, these types of things that Representative Lekis spoke to. So I think that was sort of the understanding of the ask. But again, it wasn't an OPLC ask. We sat through a lot of testimony and we worked on this in subcommittee over in the House. I think Representative Lekis addressed a lot of the points that I would address as well. The language in here is predominantly cleanup in line with sort of the 1095, the repeals. There isn't anything that should surprise or shock anybody. We're doing it here because we're trying to not put multiple boards in multiple bills. We're trying. Not always successful. But so a lot of this is just the standard cleanup that if it wasn't in 1410 would probably appear in 1095. I'm happy to answer any questions if you
All
have
right,
them.
thank you. So is it
Sure.
fair to say that lines 15 through 20 are just cleanup stuff that
Just cleanup stuff.
is, based on changes we made last year?
Correct. In line with 655409,
Yeah.
the recommendations of the study committee. Yes, sir.
Another question I had, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the committee. So in the absence of having this board in place for the med techs, obviously they serve in adjudicatory position, typically a board does.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The board typically kind of takes care of, issues, like you said, of dealing with them. And without them there, does that put more onus back on OPLC? I realize you can't do anything, but if you have a complaint, what do you do?
Well, that's a really challenging question, and it's something I've been juggling with. I did find a case, I don't recall the name of it off the top of my head, but it was essentially dicta that said, in situations where there aren't enough members of a board to meet quorum, the members appointed to the board can constitute quorum for those purposes. But issues like licensing, where we might have to do a hearing on a criminal background check, I guess the default would be if there's no board, the OPLC as the agency that reviews and issues those licenses in the first instance, we have a sound legal argument, I think, that we could hold that hearing on our own. There's some language in rule that would support that, but it's kind of a question. It's sort of a loophole. It's a gap, and there's just a big hole there. So that's what we would do, I think. If we would have to default, and this would be something I would contact DOJ about, because I would definitely not want to make that decision on my own.
Well, I understand that, and that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking, there's a real possibility of a situation that's gonna put you in a tough spot.
It puts us in a very bad spot, yes.
And that's kind of where my head was going. Is there some provision we need to think about putting in place? I mean, we've tried really hard for a long time to separate the duties of the board from the duties of OPLC, and make sure we have very clear definition between the two, that separation. And this sort of blurs those lines a lot.
It's sort of, we use the analogy, it's not one for one, but we kind of use that analogy as judge and jury, right? Where the board would be the jury and they'd be the subject matter experts and they'd provide, we don't have that person.
Exactly.
We don't have that person. I was just speaking, this did not come up in subcommittee, and I think I'd be remiss to not mention it, but the chair of the Board of Nursing is here, and it's Sam O'Neill, and she just mentioned that some of the individuals who are dual licensed do fall under the Board of Nursing, and the board apparently has had a discussion. I wasn't there. She is here if you want to ask her questions. I think she'd be willing to speak. So if the decision is we're not comfortable with a straight repeal of this board, because we're still concerned about the licensure. Board of Nursing, it might fit in there very neatly. There are licensees, like I said, who fall under other boards such as dentistry, so I'm not exactly sure how that would work. I literally just heard this a minute ago, so I haven't had an opportunity to kind of suss this out. But the way it's working right now is that it's not really working. So I think we need to do something.
Okay, so your thought is maybe we could consider moving this to the Board of Nursing, moving those duties right in under them? Is that what you're thinking?
That was what Sam recommended to me. I haven't really looked at that very
All right.
hard. So.
Thank you. Questions for Doug? Senator
Thank
Carson?
you. Thank you. can you supply us with a list of occupations that are covered under the medical technician designation that would be covered by this board? Because I'm, just off the top of my head, you have medical technologists. These are people that work in medical laboratories, do all the testing and handle all kinds of material and things. That's a 4-year degree, and you can get, some people get advanced degrees with that. Medical lab technology, these are people that go to school for 2 years and they come out with a degree and they work in other types of laboratories. And then you have phlebotomists. I know medical technologists and medical lab technicians, they have national organizations that you can, you have to have an exam, a written exam, and if you pass, you're certified. And phlebotomists, they're also certified. So I think that part of the problem might be that the definition of what is a medical technician might be too broadly defined. And that's why you've got all these different things going on. You can't find people. So if you could supply us with that, and I do think that there's a way that we could make these boards work. It's just looking at them a little differently. I saw the folks on the Board of Nursing, yeah, okay, we'll take this on. But then that means expanding the Board of Nursing, because you'd have to add a couple of individuals with this type of background in order to be a member of the board and have their industry represented. And I don't know how the board feels about expanding the number of people on the board as well. So I personally, I'd like to work on this rather than get rid of it and see what we can do to make it work, because I do feel it is important. These folks that do this kind of work, anything you have to do with a patient is extremely important. And if somebody is doing something intentionally wrong or they're making a lot of mistakes, there has to be a way that you can pull them back. So if you could just give us that list, that would be great.
I will look into that, absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course.
Further questions? All right. So, thank you, Doug. I know you weren't planning to speak, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sam, would you like to come up and talk to us? Yeah, I'd say bring along whoever you want. Good morning, welcome.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Samantha O'Neill. I'm the public member and chair of the Board of Nursing. I agree with Senator Carson. It is a much bigger issue as to where the medical technologist would appropriately be under boards, because it's not one position. There's a lot of positions that are associated with it. And that also is similar to a medical assistant. They don't fall under a board either. So I think there are ways in which it could potentially work. It's just sort of thinking outside of the box and determining what position and what certification might fall under various boards. We'd have to look at it, because not all would fall under the Board of Nursing. And it's a much bigger discussion, but I do think that we would be open to having discussions as to what would be, appropriate and not appropriate, and maybe where most appropriate positions for the boards would be.
So would you feel that, I'm thinking how to ask this, so it seems that the med tech definition is very broad.
It is.
And do you feel there's maybe some representation on your board already of some of the things that would fall under the med tech? Or would we need to add new members in order to make sure that representation was there?
In some positions, in some responsibilities, we would have that covered under various other positions on the board, but it wouldn't cover all positions and all
So
responsibilities.
we probably have to consider adding at least another member or two to the board in order to cover that?
Without really sitting down and looking at it off the top of my head, I would probably say it would be a good idea to do that, to make sure that they would be representative. But I do think that some of the roles that they have, like phlebotomists and so forth, that would fall under the nurses, the LPNs would be able to handle that component of it. But I would want to sit down with other members of the board and really look to see what falls where and where would their gaps be, and if there were gaps, how would we be able to fill them?
Is that something you could do in a, we're under very tight time constraints, is that, excuse me, is that something that you could look at kind of quickly and maybe give the committee a little guidance on what your thoughts would be on that?
It
The
depends, what do you define as quickly?
Probably within 2 weeks.
We have a board meeting, so we might be able to put it on the agenda. We have a board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks.
And there's no pressure if you can, it's just that we got to figure out how to deal with this bill, and kind of, any guidance you could give us would be appreciated.
Right, I mean, we can certainly discuss it, but I also want to make it clear that I can't speak on behalf of the board as a whole without having their input and dialogue. I mean, I'm certainly open to bringing it to the board and having that discussion.
Sure.
But it's much bigger than just me.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that. Any guidance you could give us would be appreciated. Thank you.
Work on something.
Okay. Yep.
Questions from the committee? Did you want to add anything here?
Nope, just support in case something came up.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate you coming up.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I have on the list for 1410. Anybody else who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill 1410. Rick Grote is still here, all right. We will open up the hearing on House Bill 1585. And recognize Representative Grote and introduce the bill. Good morning
Yes,
again.
and could we invite Sam O'Neill to sit with me, please?
Come on up.
So House Bill 1585 is a product of work that was done by a committee of people over the fall and the beginning of the spring. And it involved the Department of HHS, the Board of Nursing, the Nurses Association, the Council of Aging, OPLC, the New Hampshire Assisted Living Organizations. And the premise of the bill is that individuals who are living in assisted living facilities, who as a result of physical difficulties such as Parkinson's, might have trouble taking their medication. And current statute is that only nurses and MNAs can provide this assistance. But these people are not typically part of the staff of an assisted living facility because these people essentially live in their homes. So they do have personal care assistance, and the bill is to allow the personal care assistant to go through the same medical training that an MNA goes through to become licensed or certified to help individuals in an assisted living facility take their medication. And there was an amendment in the House that described the injectable part of the bill, which essentially put that part of the responsibility in statute. And that does not exist for any other nursing board personnel. So we wanted to remove that because we want that to be in rules as opposed to in statute. And I do have an amendment that was submitted to the committee to address the concerns. And I can send that to the committee. I do have a copy of here. It was not adopted by by the committee, but the committee does, the HHS, the House committee didn't adopt it. But the working committee prefers this amendment, so I'd like to submit that to you.
Sure. You
And
want
I
to
can-
copy to Edie? She can.
And I can email it to you as well.
That's all right, she'll get it for us.
Yes, and if you have any questions, you can direct them to me or to Ms. O'Neill.
Did you want to comment any before I open up to questions? Or?
I've submitted a testimony, a written testimony, so I'm not sure if you want me to read it or.
If you want to highlight You just give the highlights, you don't have to read it verbatim.
Okay, so the highlight is that overall, the Board of Nursing supports this position, which would be a CALMA, which is a certified assisted living medication aid specific to facilities under HEP 804 and 805. But we would state that the board should define scope of practice. We define scope of practice for all of the other licensees that fall under the board, and this should be the same. And our current M&As are not able to give injectables, and so we want to make sure that we're not giving a non-clinical person, because this CALMA would be just like any one of us. It would be a non-clinical person being certified to give medication. So the injectable component is a concern, and we would want to make sure that we have the appropriate discussions with the clinical expertise of the board and have that specific under rules, just like we do any other scope of practice with the other licensees that fall under the board.
All right. And Representative, does your amendment adjust the issue about the injectables? I remember we had a brief
Yes, it does.
conversation.
It
Okay.
does.
All right. Questions from the committee? No? All right, you guys leave me all alone here. All right. Thank you both. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Serenado. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Sarah Nadeau, and I am the owner and operator of Carriage Hill Assisted Living in Madbury. I also serve as a secretary for New Hampshire Arts, and I was one of the committee members that worked in this legislation. So I just wanted to speak to it as one of the administrators in a facility. So this was a very important issue to many of our members because of the difficulty in staffing. And as you guys are aware, we have one of the oldest populations in the United States. We have the aging of the baby boomers, and for many years there's been a prediction of a shortage of healthcare staffing. So this became an issue prior to COVID, and it just has been significantly exacerbated during the pandemic, and it really has not recovered. So as noted, currently in our facilities, we have RNs, LPNs, and MNAs, who are the only ones that are authorized to administer medication. And we have a range of assisted living facilities in our membership and across the state. So for my facility, for example, I have very, very few people out of the 24. It's maybe occasionally, once every 2 to 3 years, I have a resident who is actually capable, either cognitively or physically, of administering their own medication. We do have facilities in our membership that do just self-administration where the residents still are capable, but we have, I would say, more the majority who have residents who are not physically or cognitively able to take their medication. So with the shortage of staff who are legally authorized to administer medication, it is a huge safety issue for our residents. Because when you cannot staff and you have openings, our only recourse is to have people come in on, no sleep to pull a last minute overnight. If there's a call out, I do not think that is safe for someone who has not been, prepared or has not gotten adequate sleep to come in and fill a hole. And that typically in most organizations is a clinical lead, a director of nursing, that type of person. Or we rely on staffing agencies. And personally, I find that a huge safety issue because I would never hire someone and just say, here you go, here's the keys to the cart, start passing medication to my residents when they don't know our system, they don't know our residents, they've never managed their medication. So when you bring in an agency person, they may have never, and most likely have never worked in your facility, and there's no opportunity to train them because they're coming in for a call out. Also, in a larger facility, if it is a staff member and there's a call out and it's a nurse, they then may be passing medication to a much larger number of residents than they normally would have assigned to them, which also is a safety concern. So for that reason, the true root of this legislation is because we are concerned about how to safely administer the medications with a shortage of workforce staffing. There are many staff I can speak from my personal experience, who come to us out of high school, who did a career tech program. They got their LNA in high school. They're going on to a further career in the medical field. I have had many who start with me in high school, stay with us while they're in nursing school, but there is a huge time and cost commitment if they are to do the current path, which is LNA license to M&A. Currently, to sit for the M&A course, you have to have 2 years full-time as an LNA within a 5-year period, and you're talking an additional cost between getting those two licenses of somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000. So many of my staff, I'm going to say in a given day, 30% of my staff are nursing students. They are not going to invest another $5,000 when they're paying for college, nor are they able to work full-time to accrue enough hours to take it. So we have a very capable workforce who could take this course if they have not yet become an LNA. So if they're just working for us as a PCA, which is a very similar job as the LNAs in our residences, this would be a great opportunity for them to gain experience, build their career, and they are educated and capable people who I feel with this course would be capable of taking on this role. We also have many people who are PCAs because they just can't afford the time to take off for work to take these classes or the cost of the classes. So there are two groups of people I see benefiting from this. The folks that are on a college career path looking to stay in healthcare just aren't going to make that investment nor meet the hours requirement while they're in college or in high school. And then you have a track who just can't afford to take off the time and pay for these courses because truly, they are generally paycheck to paycheck. They just don't have that ability to take time off of work. But they are highly competent. And I think even though they may not be clinical staff, they may just be PCAs, someone who has taken this class, who works in our buildings, knows our residents, in my opinion, is so much safer than someone who comes in agency, who does not know my residents at all, does not know my EMR system, and is passing meds. I don't think that license alone makes them safer when they are coming in with no experience in training or orientation to my residents. So I think this is going to be a huge help and is going to truly improve the safety. And with the aging of the baby boomers, we know this wave is coming. We know that the workforce situation is pretty dire in this state and across the nation right now. And I just think that it's very timely that we need to come up with another alternative. And I do also want to make it very clear that we are a residential care setting. We are not a nursing home. We are not a treatment facility. We do not diagnose. We are simply following the orders from these residents' primary care or specialty providers. So we are doing nothing different than any of us do at home. We are following the order on the prescription label. And those orders are very clear. And even for PRN medications, it is very clear that it will say, take this medication for anxiety, for pain. And we have multiple ways to assess that with residents. They're either going to verbally tell us they need it, or these are things that a layperson can determine. And again, just because they've come into our home as opposed to home where a son or daughter might have been setting up their pill box, these staff are going to have a 40-hour course. They're going to have continuing education, and they will be doing this as their job, and they know our residents very well. So if there is something that seems off with a resident, they are going to call the primary care, send them to urgent care, or call 911. Those are the steps we take. We did want to make this applicable to the various size homes we have. So many of us, like my facility, I have multiple nurses. They're just not on 24 hours a day, but I have a director of nursing. I have an associate director of nursing. They are on call 24/7 should my M&As have a question. The CALMAs will have that same opportunity to call. And if it is a smaller facility that does not have a nurse on staff, we have put in the statute that there has to be a nurse or practitioner provider available 24 hours a day for that person to call with questions. So multiple ways that different size homes can meet the rule and intent and safety features of this without necessarily directly employing a nurse themselves. We have been very clear to make sure this must be people who are 18 and older. They have to have a high school degree, and they have to have a recommendation from the administrator or the director of nursing before we would send them to the course. They also have to have successfully passed their 90-day introductory period. So we want to make sure that someone doesn't hire someone and immediately say you're going to the class. We, as administrators or directors of nursing, have to make sure they've successfully passed their 90-day introductory period. They show the skill sets, because our license and our resident safety is at stake. So there are also safeguards, because with medication, we do handle narcotics. We do want to make sure that it is a licensed position so that it can be revoked. There are disciplinary actions. So in the event, just like we would do with an RN, an LPN, or an MNA, if we suspect drug diversion or some type of lack of job performance, that we can report that to the Board of Nursing, and that license can be revoked, or there can be other disciplinary actions. So I feel that we have put in the same safeguards that are in place for the other licensed folks that are able to perform this role, and extra safeguards in that they have to be 18, have to have been recommended for the course by management in our facilities.
Thank you. You touched on one thing that I had highlighted in the bill, that I wanted to make sure that this is only in a residential setting. It's not going to be anything that could be performed at a hospital or anything like that, correct?
Correct. And also, we're very careful to say it must be an employee, because again, the concern with agency is that they're coming in and they do not know our residents. So it has to be an employee of the residents. And yes, it is only applying to the HEP 804 and 805 facilities, which is why we were very careful to put the word assisted living in the actual title of this role.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Gary Cahoon? Cahoon, all right, I got it.
Chairman, members of the committee. For the
Turn your mic on, please. Gary, turn your mic on.
Not on, sorry.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for the opportunity to address you on House Bill 1585. My name is Gary Cahoon. I am a resident of Peterborough. For 37 years, my wife and I owned Friendship Manor, which was a small residential care home in New Ipswich, New Hampshire. We were forced to close in May of 2022 because we could not hire or retain sufficient staff to continue to safely operate. In 1994, which I realize now is ancient history, but in 1994, I served on a study committee in the House as a stakeholder representing New Hampshire Arch. The rules were different at that time. The stakeholders are actually members of the committee. But what that study committee was doing was trying to establish what a reasonable reimbursement rate for residential care was. Under pressure from the federal government. It's the so-called COLA bill, which I guess we don't really need to get into the details of the COLA bill. But anyway, one of the things that the committee looked into, though, is it looked into broader and broader factors that affected the cost of providing residential care was medication administration. And in that committee, I told the story of Don, who was a resident at Friendship Manor. Don was a man in his 60s, was perfectly appropriately placed at Friendship Manor in terms of his level of care, except that he had a tremor from Parkinson's disease and he had glaucoma. So he needed to put in eye drops 3 or 4 times a day, which he physically could not do. At the time, and even today, if we were to supervise the self-administration of medication, which is what we did, we were supposed to assist Don hand over hand. In other words, he was supposed to hold the drop bottle. We were to move his hand over his eye and tell him to squeeze the bottle. This usually resulted in the drop landing on his nose and rolling down his nose and falling on the floor. Now, the only reason that Don might have needed to go to a nursing home was because of the inability to administer his eye drops. This was an ongoing problem for a number of years and was recognized as such. The COLA committee in 1994 decided not to address this at that time because they were more concerned with the the very specific financial question, but suggested that this be brought up in a subsequent session. And indeed, it was, I believe it was the following session, there was a bill to establish a pilot program similar to the program of medication administration in the certified homes, the mental health homes and the DD homes. That bill at that time was defeated for a number of reasons, but probably the biggest reason was the public opposition of the Board of Nursing and the New Hampshire Nurses Association. Now, going back briefly to Don, if Don had been living at home and receiving services from home health care, a visiting nurse could have trained Don's family members or a friend of Don to put his eye drops in. It would have been perfectly legal, and it would have been perfectly acceptable. It was not acceptable, and it's still not acceptable in residential care settings if there is not a licensed person. So Don continued to live at Friendship Manor until 2010 and was appropriately cared for, but we won't go into exactly how those eye drops got in his eyes. So this has been, in large part, an unresolved issue for nearly 30 years. For the first time in 30 years, there really is a consensus among all the stakeholders to do something about this. And I would urge the committee and the Senate to seize this opportunity to resolve this question that's been hanging out there for 30 years.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? And we're glad Don was able to get his eye drops. That was, all right, thank you for testifying. Kelly and Doreen, is there any info that you want to bring forward? I mean, you didn't sign up to speak, said information if needed. So anything you feel we need?
Thank you. Sam O'Neill is actually going to speak on our behalf as well. She is going to come up and say something.
Sam, you want to come up again?
Thank you, Sam.
Oh.
I'm good.
All right.
So for the record, again, my name is Samantha O'Neill. I'm the public member and chair of the Board of Nursing. There's just a couple of points, I think, just to clarify and make sure that we're all aligned. The role of a CALMA is not to assess patients. That's way out of the scope because, again, they're non-clinical. Just like in LNA and in MNA, assessments are not part of the scope. It would be giving specific medication per doctor's orders, but it would not put them in a situation where they have to assess patients. And that is your question, Senator Pearl, regarding hospitals. This is specifically for 804 and 805 licensed facilities, which they have specific criteria. I can't state what that criteria is because that's outside of my realm of knowledge, but we have people here who can speak to that. But we also wanted to make sure that the word assisted living was in the title to make sure that that individual cannot administer medication in any other type of facility.
Okay, thank you. I got that from this, but I just kind of wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
make sure it was on the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Further comments? You good? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wants to testify on House Bill 1585? All right, seeing none, I will close the hearing. Kevin, do we have any update on Senator Altshuler? Carrie?
3 minutes ago, she said, "Call me to talk to him."
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute recess and we'll reconvene at 10:15. We'll go into exec session.
Okay.
Exec session?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, for the benefit of the committee, we have 14 bills left to hear after today. So I have scheduled 6 for next Tuesday, and the remaining 8 I will split over the following couple of weeks. And we'll continue to examine.
So Tuesday, I have committee.
Excuse me, Wednesday.
Okay,
I'm sorry. Did I say Tuesday?
you did,
Next Wednesday.
okay.
Our usual day.
Okay.
What was the total again, 16?
We have 14
14.
remaining after today. We got 3 more assigned last night. Kevin, that should be our last
Another
ones,
3,
right?
okay.
They said those are the last.
All right,
Yeah,
good.
the last one's from the House.
So we're gonna do 2 more?
So we'll have 3 more
3 more
hearing days.
hearing days, 3 more.
I'll do 6 of them
Got
next
it.
week. And
All right.
we will keep fitting in exec session as we have time and ability to complete them. So, all right,
In order, okay. here.
today, we'll just start through the list in order of the plan that Kevin provided here, the master sheet. I'm going to hold CACR 13. House Bill 274, I think it needs some work. I'm not sure we're ready to exec that. So I have on my notes to hold it at this point. Unless you have an amendment, okay? I'm willing to look at it if you have something you want to do.
Discuss it.
and Yep.
If you like it, you like it.
Okay, I
House
see.
Bill, it's Chair, if you
Do we
remember.
have it here?
I did just give it to Kevin, I think you might have handed
It's in
it
my,
off.
I have a pile of.
So in the hearing, the issue on this bill was, it was a good bill that was sort of trying to create more engagement with the process, but there was this language, there was an obligation to distribute information to known stakeholders.
Yes.
And so a couple of the agencies raised issues about that. I also had raised an issue. And so the amendment in front of you, all it does is change known stakeholders to past participants in similar rulemaking proceedings.
I don't seem to
So,
have it in my.
I tried to capture the spirit of that with something that was a little more concrete. There would have been a docket of who participated in other rulemaking proceedings to kind of guide the agencies and accomplish what Representative McGuire was trying to accomplish. So I propose that for the committee's review.
What number is the amendment?
The amendment is 1489.
The only other note I had is
14.9.
down on line 30
Thank
of
you
the
so much.
bill is should we change that shall to may? And I had question marks beside it.
The agency fails to meet its burden of proof, the court shall declare the whole or portion of the rule of
Page 1, line 30?
Yeah, page 1, line 30.
I have that, I have a note there, DHHS says there should be judicial discretion.
And that would be the may.
That would be, yeah.
I would be fine
So-
changing that to may. We could do that via committee amendment if the committee's comfortable with my language, but if not, we can.
And that was a note that I had. I didn't necessarily make a decision one way or the other on what I had there. I just had put that note down.
Yeah, I had that same concern. If I may, Mr. Chair. I think my biggest concern was the definition of who's a stakeholder. We had a number of people ask about that and comment to us, and Representative McGuire said it was intentionally vague. I don't know, I think we just need to look at that as to really who is a stakeholder. Because if not, you're gonna have to send these notices out to,
I could see that would be a nightmare.
yeah, and that would be a problem.
So did you look at Senator Perkins' Quokka amendment?
Yeah, there
Yeah,
is no,
past participants, actually, I have a note about Rep. McGuire.
yeah, there's no definition of
be-
who's a stakeholder.
Exactly.
So I just took out the word stakeholder because I thought it didn't create a concrete enough obligation for the agencies, and I just replaced it with past
Past
participants
participants,
in
yeah.
similar rulemaking proceedings.
Which is something that Rep. McGuire mentioned during the
Correct.
questioning we had
Right.
back and forth, that the most common people who would be stakeholders are past participants and that anyone else can sign up to get into that notification pool, but people who are part of this process were,
I think I'd
that was
like a
what one
little
of
bit
her
more time to think on this.
notations.
I appreciate your effort, and I'd like to think about
Yeah.
the actual implication of even what that would mean. So if, I'm gonna leave this one on hold right now, and we can consider your amendment
Oh, good.
in a future exec session.
Okay.
I wanna hold 518.
Okay.
I don't think we're ready on 644 yet. I know Representative Power had reached out to me last night about it, and I had asked her to have a discussion with Senator Carson, which she's
And
not
I
had the opportunity to
got
yet.
an email from her last evening.
So, uh, 653, I believe we can do a committee amendment, at least from my notes
I
on
have
this one.
an amendment.
Oh, you have an amendment for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe, yep.
I don't.
Yeah, very simple.
Oh, yes, back here. Sorry, I got it
Yep.
mixed in.
No, that's okay.
I tried to put them in order and I mixed that one up.
Okay. And everyone should have gotten it.
Yeah. Here. I thought that was a pretty simple one to fix, if I remember right.
1524, Senator Carson, is that,
Amendment 1524.
Yes.
that's the one? Okay,
So
that's the
I'd like to make a motion of ought to pass, so we can,
Okay.
if you want to
Do we
go
have a
that
second?
way. I'll second it. Okay, and I would like to offer the committee amendment 1524S. And if I may, Mr. Chair,
Please.
to speak to that.
Yep.
I think it came up, and it's on page 1, line 30. I don't like that line of that the chairperson shall be the chairman of criminal justice and public safety. I think it should be open to the members to decide who they want to be the chair, rather than having the chair of criminal justice automatically be the chair. So what the amendment does, it deletes that second section and renumbers the original section 3 to read as 2.
So the only thought that I had is, rather than saying she'll be the chair of criminal justice, it was just gonna be the chair should be a legislator, or shall be a legislator.
I don't even think, Mr. Chair, you want to hamstring people like that.
Yeah, I know, that was the thought I had coming out of.
Because the Interbranch Criminal and Juvenile Justice Council, you've got people from the courts, you've got people from nonprofits that are there. So I just want them to have the ability to choose the best person.
Agreed.
And not to automatically have it be a legislator.
I'm okay with it, that was just the note that I had.
Okay.
I have no opposition to doing it, the
Yeah.
way you
Yep.
suggested.
I don't have any issue with it.
no opposition, none.
All right, further discussion on the amendment.
Yeah, we're just gonna delete that section. The only question that I have here, and I noticed it yesterday, if we delete the that last section, I just wanna make sure that we're not deleting what's already in statute.
No, we'd just be deleting it out of
Okay,
the bill.
all right, I just,
Right.
because
Yep.
Matthew said, oh, you should look at this, and I said, okay, let's drop an amendment.
No,
I just wanna make sure that
No,
it
you
was.
look-
It would,
That's
it
good.
would leave statute as it
Yeah.
is currently in place.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
we should leave it in place the way it is. There's no reason to do that.
All in favor of amendment 1524S?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move consent. Oh,
No, we gotta finish.
Oh.
Senator Carson moves ought to pass as
Pass.
amended.
and I'm like,
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
move consent.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor of consent?
Aye.
Senator Carson, would you like to take
Yes.
this one out? All right. Hey, we got one done.
Yay.
Consent calendar.
It's always a good thing.
No one has a
Okay, 1,000.
amendment for 10,003, do they?
Do you have an amendment?
No, I'm just asking, because I got a pile of them.
I would,
Okay.
let's open up to
I don't
1,003.
No, I don't see any.
Is there a motion in place?
I move that to pass.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I will say that
Okay.
I was blown away when I realized that someone could even do this. And I was very disturbed. I certainly felt from the testimony of the family members here that I could feel their pain in this, and I'm very supportive of this bill
okay,
going
I see.
forward.
Yeah.
I have a,
I am as well. I see
I
you
also,
have,
I'm particularly struck that, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to-
oh, no, please, go on, because I got a,
Do you
There is an
have
amendment
something?
in here.
yeah, I have an amendment, it's 1281S.
Yes,
yeah.
1281S.
so we have it on to pass. Do you want to move your amendment so we can discuss it?
Yeah, I'll move on to pass.
Is it a U amendment?
Yep, it's a me
I'm
amendment.
looking up for,
I'll second for the purposes of discussion. Senator Cranston?
And
I
I
don't
did
have
this
that.
back in, I think it came from Representative Katab. She actually gave us the amendment.
Thank
So
you.
I think, some of it I adopted, and I'm looking here. I think it's pretty much, and the only thing that I didn't do was amend the
Say
bill by
section
inserting after section 1, the following and just, it just doesn't even allow them to really change their name.
Looks like you added some stuff in line 25, 26.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, because this one was done a little while ago, back in January, I think I'd just like a few, just to be able
Take a
to
minute?
go
You wanna take
over
a
it.
2-minute
Do you have a
recess?
copy?
I got it right here. I'm looking at it
Oh,
right
okay.
now, yeah. So, so the changes are at the end, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you added in
Or
the
a
Department of Safety.
Or a person who
On
was
line
convicted of
26.
a violent child petitioner shall serve a copy of the Department of Safety and
Oh,
the
yeah.
initial process.
Does-
Okay,
Yeah.
How did you pick that up that quick?
pardon?
How did you pick that up that quick?
she's fast.
She's a lawyer, that's why.
That's fast.
So
I went,
what's-
my eyes were going to all the important pieces. And
Yeah,
So it looks like you just added the Department of Safety on line 26.
yeah, I did,
Okay.
okay. Yeah,
Okay,
So discussion on the amendment.
it looks like this is a cleanup that I'm getting some nods from the audience about. So it feels like a good change, and I agree with the comments the chairman made. I mean, it's terrifying that someone could escape their past this easily, and I'm really thankful to Representative Katab for bringing this forward.
Further discussion.
yeah. I think the amendment just is excellent to include the Department of Safety, particularly since we're gonna be, enhancing our electronic communications, between
Yeah.
departments, so this would be really important to keep them looped in. And I'm just, remembering some survivors that have come before committees in our past, who have had, like, these women were by far, some of the strongest and tenacious people that we have been able to speak to, here in this committee. And they had each other, and they had the support to be able to follow through on this. I can actually imagine the trauma of being a sole survivor, a sole child, a sole victim of an assault, and have the perpetrator just remake their life while you're trying to rebuild your own. And this should never have happened in the first place. So I'm glad this is coming forward now.
Further discussion. Senator Carson.
thank you. I also am very glad that Representative Katab brought this bill forward. It's appalling to find out that someone, while they're still incarcerated, can change their name because they want to erase their past. And that's why I think why we have all these, and these are all violent crimes that are being committed against fellow citizens. And I understand why someone would want to, after they pay their debt to society, they want to move on. But they've left victims in their past. And we know that there are studies after studies after studies to show that oftentimes people reoffend. And they hide behind the new name because there's no connection between the old name and the new name. And it usually comes to light after someone has reoffended. So I think by being proactive and saying you're not allowed to change your name, and putting some difficult hoops that they have to go through, including the notifications to the Department of Safety. So if they are on a sex offenders list, they will still be on a sex offender list with the new name annotated. I think that's important, and it's about public safety. It really and truly is. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this.
Further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the amendment 1281, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Carson, did you
I
want to
move on to pass as amended.
All right, do we have a second?
Second?
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now move consent, or do you want to?
I think I'd actually like to take this one on the floor, and I'm going to take it out.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Next on the list would be 10:30, and I had some notes on that, so let's pull the bill out and see what we've got here.
Chair, I believe I did a simple amendment to this one as
And you
well.
have an amendment to it? Oh, yes, okay.
So as you guys are pulling it out, the only note I had was that the Association of Counties had come and asked that their county state finance commission not be repealed because it had just met like last week or something. So the amendment I have, which looks kind of complicated, all it does is remove line 20 from page 2 of the original bill.
Yep. That's what I had. That's why I was just going to do it as a committee. Right? But you got it. Senator Carson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some concerns about the repealing the advisory committee on state procurement. I know that it hadn't met, but it didn't. The last time it met was right after COVID. And it's really at the call of the House. As the Senate, we can't call the meeting because I went back and looked. So we're dependent upon the House. It is important. I did a tremendous amount of work over the past years concerning procurement to streamline the RFP process. And it was very interesting to have the Department of Revenue, the Administrative Services come in and talk about the changes that have been made to state procurement and the fact that during COVID, we were able to get our supplies that were greatly needed in a very quick fashion, much faster than other states. And it was because some of the changes that we need to make. We know that there are two big departments that really do their own thing just because of the volume of work. That's the Department of Health and Human Services. The other is the Department of Transportation. But we had been working on getting all the other agencies to follow the same procedures for procurement. Okay. And before we get rid of this, I'd like to find out where they are. Mm-hmm. And if needs be, we can put in an amendment that says that it's at the call of the Senate, not the House. Okay. Because it's a once-a-year meeting, and the last one was Representative Schuett who called the meeting, and that was done I think it was in September. We just had one very quick meeting. Well, not quick. I still have all the paperwork from it and everything. So I think it would be good just to keep that and see if we need to make some changes in order to make it work.
Okay. So would you consider, Senator Perkins Coker, just an amendment to your amendment of striking line 7 from your amendment?
Yes.
and that would effectively remove the repeal.
Yeah, and I can, these won't be on the floor until next week, and I can.
Oh, no, next week, I'm sorry, you're right.
No, we're not here
It's
the
this week we're off.
25th. We're not in session on the 25th.
No, it's next week we're on. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
next
yes.
week
It'll
we're
be-
off, so it'll be
May
after.
1st or 2nd,
Yeah.
whatever day that is.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be April 1st, so I can get a floor amendment that, if that's okay, to strike that and just go back and look at the statute and change it from call of the House to the call of the Senate.
Why don't we strike it right here in committee?
Yeah, do a committee amendment.
I mean, we'd have to look at it, I don't know
It just
what the
leaves it
statute
in
is.
place.
Okay,
It leaves
Like
the
you
state
wanna-
procurement in place.
And then you
Okay.
could just bring the floor amendment.
If you want a
to-
floor
Yeah,
amendment to
okay.
move to the Senate, you could do that.
okay, I will definitely do that.
All right, so Kevin, are you clear on what we're doing
Striking line 7.
of the amendment? Yep, and that'll become a committee amendment.
The other one that I had a question about was line 9, the committee to study the laws related to the condominium and homeowners association. I don't know about you, but I always seems to get emails and phone calls, especially about homeowner associations, the HOAs. As most of you know, in Londonderry, a large part of our community is contaminated with PFAS. And I'm getting a lot of phone calls and emails from people that live in condominiums that are governed under a homeowners association, that they're not participating, they're not doing anything to help these folks get clean water, including negotiating with the towns, because that's really what happens. And I've sent one of my constituents a lot of information about it, but I'm just concerned that if we do away with this, where are these folks going to go if they have a complaint or a concern? The other thing is, I've gotten a lot of complaints from condo associations about how high these home HOA fees are going, and they're becoming oppressive. So how do we, if we do away with this committee, where are they going to go to complain? And that's just my concern, something to think about.
Has there been, I mean, we didn't receive any testimony in opposition to removing this, repealing it.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't had the same experience you have, but I believe that you have.
Yeah, I'll gladly, well, no, we can't. I was gonna say, I will send you my email, so you can see.
Whatever the will of the committee is, I'm fine with. I don't care whether we leave the repeal or we take it out. I mean, what is the thought of the committee?
I hear the validity of the points Senator Carson was raising.
All right, so we'd all be in agreement to strike line 9 as well?
Sure.
Okay. So Kevin, our committee amendment's gonna strike line 7 and line 9 of the Senator Perkins Quokka amendment.
Because, Mr. Chair, I can go back and look at the RSA, and if the case is that, again, it's something that's called by the first name member of the House, maybe we can fix that and do the first name member of the Senate.
That's up, if you'd like to bring that amendment,
All right.
it will still be in play.
Okay,
All right, so just for clarity of the committee, we're essentially, we're taking all the language that is in 1490, Senator Perkins Quokka's amendment, and we're removing line 7 and line 9, which effectively, to the original bill, removes page 2, line 19, line 20, and line 22 and 3. Everybody all clear on that?
Yep.
All right. That will become our committee amendment. So all in favor of the committee amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't know who moved this originally.
I don't think there was.
There wasn't, oh, we didn't move the
I
bill?
thought we did.
Oh,
I did not hear.
Okay, well, I'll move the bill.
All right, Senator Carson moves House Bill 1030.
second?
Senator Perkins Quokka seconds, and we have now adopted the amendment, the committee amendment. So the vote now will be on, ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1030 with the committee amendment. Any further
moved.
discussion? Oh, she's moved.
Oh.
Senator Carson moved. You got that, right?
Yep. Mhm.
And Senator Perkins Quokka seconded.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And consent?
No, because I'm bringing floor amendment.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Well, you
So
could
I'll
pull it
take
off
it up.
consent if you want to
On-
bring floor amendments.
Pardon?
We could put it on consent, and if you decide you want to bring floor amendments, you
Yeah,
can
that's
pull it
fine.
off.
Okay.
All right, consent?
Aye.
Do we have a second?
Second.
There, all in favor?
Aye.
We'll let Senator Carson take this out, that way she can pull her own bill off from consent.
Okay. Oh, no, 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 no.
That's 10:30, Carson.
10:30, yeah.
Consent.
Oh, jeez, I just turned this page over.
Okay.
Just- I was like, oh, look at that, we have 3 more. And then I turned it over. Oops. 10:57.
Let me look at 10:59 real quick. I have a few notes.
Is it
These are
now
not-
57?
I don't have any notes on that one. Are we ready to move that?
10:57.
I don't know why, for some reason, I seem to have skipped it. So if you want to look at 10:57 real quick, I'm going to look at 10:59 real quick, because I'm not positive I have everything I need yet on that, but I need to make sure.
That was a pretty big
So,
Yes. So 10:57.
Building code.
Oh,
Yeah.
the 10:57 is.
10:57.
57 is licenses for
For some reason,
Yeah,
didn't have any
emergency
notes.
medical emergency.
So I reached out to Senator Carson's office and got a reply on this one because I personally would feel more comfortable making an amendment on 1057. We discussed that these are temporary licensees, and the issue raised was whether they would be alone
Yes,
with patients.
I have
Yeah.
that same.
So I
You want to hold off on this one and do an amendment?
I would like to.
Yeah, I think that's why I didn't have anything on it. Okay, so we're going to hold that.
This is 10:57?
Yes. All right, so you guys can give me just a minute on 10:59, because I think I just got more information on this.
Okay, 10:59.
And that is 10:59.
It's got a fat stack. To the building code.
Yeah, this is the energy code.
Yeah, with all the. We
I have a feeling we may not have a consensus in the whole committee on this bill. Which is okay. There we are. Do you guys want to get into this today, or do you want to wait?
No.
Do you need
No?
to hold this? Or are you
All
still
right,
working on
let's put a hold on this one.
Okay, we're holding it.
We're gonna hold 10:59. I don't know that I'm quite ready either. All right.
Okay.
I skipped 1078 for some reason, and I'm not sure why I did. So let's,
Gaps in radio coverage.
yes, I think there was something we were waiting for on this.
You talked about a mapping.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
Senator Carson had talked about these communities doing some sort of mapping.
Yeah, yeah,
I
you
don't-
need to,
I don't think we're quite ready to go on
No.
this. There's a reason I have gone beyond it. All right, 1070, 1080, I mean, I think we can.
So we're holding 78?
78, we're gonna hold.
Okay.
79, we haven't heard yet, so we can't do that one. 80, I believe we can do this one.
All right, I have an amendment for this one.
Actually we can't do this one yet. I had promised Representative Hill that he could talk to us on this, and he's tied up until after 11. Let's put this on hold until the latter part of our exec session, okay?
All right.
And if Representative Hill is not able to make it down before we're done, I'm gonna hold it until the next week, because he wanted to address the committee.
Okay.
Let me shoot him a text real quick. I know he was in committee until 10 to 11.
All right. That was 11:40.
No, 1080. Okay, so now we're in 1095.
One second. 1078, I want to hold, 1080, 1095, yep. And I had a note down to possibly do a committee amendment on this. I can refresh my
Yes.
memory as to what it is. Okay, yes, we have a couple.
Yes.
Okay. This is the one you sent me stuff with. All right. So we had two changes that we need to do and that were requested. The electricians have requested a change, some additional language, which, did I do? We may have more than one amendment in here. for this.
I only have one.
You only have one?
Yeah, and it's from Senator Perkins Coker.
Okay.
And that's it. I think we
Yep.
need another one.
I think I had figured we could do it as a committee amendment, but we'll look at Senator Perkins Bloker if we're okay with that. Senator Perkins Bloker, just for the purpose of discussion, would you like to talk about what you wanted to amend? Before we make an motion on the bill, because I'm not sure we can do this without another amendment.
Yeah, I agree. So, so this, I guess this is a proto amendment. It's the beginning of what we need to do, but this was one issue that was raised actually to me via email after the hearing. So just so everyone has context on it, I had asked a question about, there were a bunch of sections related to cosmetology and barbering that were repealed and reenacted. So this was a request of, Elizabeth Eaton, yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
So where in the bill would we find this?
This would be in
Page 7.
section 18, and essentially what it would allow is just to make sure that
3/4 of the way down, page 7.
the board has the authority to determine the criteria for shop license, and then also to set health and safety standards for licensees. So it's probably an unintentional omission, but I offer it for the board's consideration.
Okay.
Okay, I see.
13.
So it would go like on line 29
Yep.
of page 7.
And that is what page?
Page
7.
7 of the original bill.
Okay,
That would
got
be-
the amended by the House, or are you looking
Yes,
at?
yes. So
Okay.
go right back where you were, if you
Yeah.
right down here.
Okay,
It would go into after line 29.
Right.
okay.
So I think there's more to do, so just take this into consideration, but again, the intent is just to make sure the board is able to set standards for licensing and set standards for health and safety.
If you guys are game, I think we could do this as a committee amendment. The two changes I have are not substantial.
Okay.
What do you have?
Okay,
Yeah.
let's try it.
So,
Do you have the electricians?
yes,
Okay.
the electrician's language.
Yep.
And
It's
the
on
MLADAC.
page 63,
Right. 3.
Yeah, I have electricians
25.
and LADAC, and then
35.
there was one more.
Okay, 65.
And then there's something about reciprocity.
I think 5 through 35.
Maybe we're okay.
think
on
you're-
reciprocity. I think I asked a question
Is
about
that on the 600 hours?
Yes.
Okay.
You think it's gonna be too complicated? Should we just put a full amendment together?
I think you need a full amendment.
All right.
Because I'm looking here, they're talking about page 63, line 25 to 35.
Yep.
And I'm looking at page 25. Nope, sorry, wrong page. I do think we need to just make sure we get it right.
Let me just do a full
I've got
amendment. That'll be easier
two-
on Kevin.
I've
So
got
right
this
now,
written now, I give to Kevin.
I'll take,
What's the
I'll
other
take
one?
on getting an amendment.
Okay,
So what I have is the 600 hours for the electricians
Yes.
And I have the MLATEX, the definition that they want.
Where was
fixed.
that?
That is,
I remember that.
Page 5, line 27.
Yes.
Yep.
Page,
I have language from Doug Oaks to help
Yep.
to fix that he's worked with the two ladies that were here, and I'm sorry, I don't remember their names.
Okay, and then the only other thing I have is on the language that Steve sent us about the 600 hours.
This is what we have from Doug.
Erin
That
Majiri.
meets criteria established
Yep.
by the board and rule.
So I think I have the correct language that everybody's good with, and then the third thing would be what your amendment is here, Senator
Okay.
Perkins Coker. I will incorporate all three of these into one amendment, okay? And I'll bring that back for next week.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I have notes that Dr. Courtney and Representative Grota were like A-okay with all of those.
All right.
Yeah.
So let me
That
just
wasn't
make
gonna be-
myself a note.
Committee conference issue.
Great.
Okay. I want to hold 1078. Next one, oh, sorry, I'm going backwards again.
So do we, I'm sorry, do we want to vote on a committee amendment right now? Or no?
Let
Okay.
me make one in OLS, it's going to be easier.
Okay.
I think there's too much there.
Okay.
I want to hold 1140, that's the one I was talking about, I'm sorry. And
We
I
have
want
an
to hold
amendment.
1292.
What about 1274?
I did not have anything on that for some reason, so let's look at it.
I'm sorry, 1140 is holding?
1292.
1292 is hold,
Okay.
and 11,
Yeah, we got 1252. Have you looked at that one?
1140 is hold,
Hold, okay.
Yeah,
1292 is hold. No, let's look at
70,
we
52?
can look at 1252 and 1274, I'm fine with it.
12, 52.
So I make a motion to ITL 1252.
I will second that.
Let me just get to it. 1090, I just gotta put a couple things back here. 1252. I kinda went through these as I had time, and picked out the ones I knew what I wanted to do with. All right, so we have a motion of ITL and a second on 1292.
1252.
1252, I'm sorry. 1252, is discussion.
I just feel, I mean, again, I'm coming from a Native American background, but I feel like the Native American Commission is already doing a very good job here in New Hampshire, and they are, they're looking into the needs. The other thing that I feel bad about, it's just the Nulhegan tribe that kind of is the focus, and there's four or five other tribes, and it's connected between New Hampshire and Vermont. Vermont is recognized, not federal-wide, but New Hampshire is not. I would just like to see, if this is going to happen, a little more inclusion. So the way it's presented, I feel that we should ITL it.
Further discussion? Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with my colleague. I got quite a bit of email about this by members of other tribes who were very unhappy that this bill was even filed. They claim that the commission is working, and I just see a lot of infighting between the various tribes, and I don't think we should be in the position of picking winners and losers. I think this is an issue that they need to resolve amongst themselves. And again, I don't want to get in the middle of the argument and fight. They have the commission, and it's working, so I just think they need to settle this problem and come forward united.
Further discussion?
Yeah, the other thing that I was a little concerned about is that they did not get the commissions, they didn't involve the commission in that, so.
All right, further discussion? Senator Olson?
Yeah, well, I do think it's, I think we need to acknowledge that Senator Waters was the co-sponsor of the bill that established the Native American Commission, and he is a strong, strong supporter of this bill, and that we received testimony both in person and via email that there is support for this commission. I believe that we heard testimony that there are over 3,000 people in the state of New Hampshire who identify as Native American, and that we also heard testimony that the commission is having their own struggles with gathering a quorum, and that's, so I don't know that we can say with a surety that the commission is doing the work, because it doesn't sound like that's actually happening. In fact, we have testimony here that says they're supposed to be meeting. They were supposed to have met last week, and I have not heard any confirmation that that happened with a quorum. So, I mean, we have members of the Native American community who are asking for this opportunity to get together and study the needs of their community in New Hampshire. And I just, seeing as that one of the prime sponsors of the original commission is also now coming to us saying, this is another needed piece of information. I defer to Senator Waters on this, and to Representative Gould, who made a very compelling argument as to why this is necessary.
Further discussion?
There is an awful lot of infighting, unfortunately, and I have calls from my chief, from the Coasac tribe, that very upset that there isn't more inclusive. I guess I would feel a lot better if they had reached out to the other tribes. So I just don't want us to get in the middle of this. It's bad enough to be a Native American and dealing with this at that level anyway. So
sometimes one of the benefits of legislation is we don't actually have to pass it to effectuate change. Sometimes just the fact that a bill is introduced and discussion occurs might prompt the powers that be that are currently having some issues getting along. They might realize that they need to sit down and have a further conversation.
have a powwow.
Have a powwow. There you go. And sometimes we get that benefit just by having the discussion here in the legislature, even though we may not move the bill forward today. I think we're sending a message that you folks need to sit down and have a conversation and talk about this together. And I guess I would say, I would encourage perhaps this bill come back next year if some results don't occur between now and then with the situation as it stands. And maybe that's a message that you could get delivered to them, that the legislature will look at this again if we're not feeling comfortable that they've made some progress forward.
And I used to sit on the New Hampshire Native American Commission, and not for a huge amount of time or long period of time, but there were a lot of things that we were able to accomplish. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they're not now, but
right. Well, let's hope this kicks them into gear.
Well, yeah, I think that, lines 19 and 20 of the bill, review the duties, activities, and composition of the commission. And it seems like it needs maybe it needs some reform, and members of the of the Native American community are asking for that opportunity to do that. So, I would.
Further discussion?
Yeah.
All right, so Senator Carson.
Thank you. In regards to Senator Altshuler's comments, I think this would be a great opportunity for a legislator who's very interested in this to sit down with those individuals and come up with some solutions and then file a piece of legislation. I agree with Senator Gendreau, that this is infighting in amongst these tribes, and they've got to resolve this. So I think it's a great opportunity, as I said, for a legislator to sit down with all of them and try to figure out what's going on, rather than forming a committee to work against the commission. I don't think that's a good way to get things done. I don't think it's a good way to produce policy. Everyone needs to be included, so.
And I have a high degree of respect for Representative Gould and the others that are putting this forward, because I understand it's frustrating. It is very frustrating, but I think I'd like to see a little bit more inclusive discussion moving forward.
Well, let's hope that occurs after this bill has been introduced and they realize that the legislature is paying attention. So, further discussion? All right, so we have a motion of ITL. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oops, sorry, didn't vote the right way though. So I'm not voting for ITL.
You're not voting, okay. So we have 3 votes for ITL. All those opposed?
No.
No.
So the motion passes 3-2.
Do you want Senator General?
Senator General, would you like to take this up? Okay. I see Representative Hill has made it. So I will ask us to go back to House Bill 1080. And Representative, would you like to join us and have a conversation? Welcome.
To leave in about 8 minutes.
8 minutes? Okay. So we got about 8 minutes.
Okay.
Turn on your mic, please. Welcome.
Good
I know
morning.
there's some comments that in conversation you and I had after this bill had gone through the hearing and you weren't able to attend, and there was some things you felt you wanted to clarify, so
Well,
the floor is yours.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Representative Greg Hill. I chair the committee that heard the bill on the Legislative Youth Advisory Council, and I listened to the hearing, and there were a couple of unanswered questions that I thought might be beneficial if we were able to fill some of the blanks in. For those that aren't aware, I've been involved with the council since 2010, my first year here, when my son was the chairman, acting in that year. And there have been ups and downs with probably the best way of saying it. The council is highly dependent upon the activity of the members that are chosen for the council. Just the way it is. It is a fairly small group of people, so as you can imagine, if they are very active and very interested in being active, then it's a great council. If they aren't, it's not. So I can tell you since 2010, there's been 5 years, for instance, where they've not filed an annual report, which is one of the items that they're required to do. They basically have 2 functions. One is filing that annual report, and one is providing the general court with the New Hampshire youth perspective on pending legislation. So for those, there were 5 of those years where they filed no report and did virtually no testifying on pending legislation. I can tell you that the other high points of the legislation that we brought to you, or the changes in the amendment, were to address the difficulty that we've had filling the membership of the council because there were 4 separate appointers and they were uncoordinated efforts. So where the council by statute is required to have a geographic diversification and also a diversification of the type of student, whether they're a public school student, traditional public school, charter school, home school, private school, it was very difficult where the 4 appointers didn't coordinate those appointments. So sometimes it was completely out of balance. So one thing that this bill does is create the amendment, is create the ability to have one appointer, Gesundheit. And that, in that way, if the House handles that, we feel that that would allow for that diversification in a much more measured way. We also have added a couple of additional people to the council. As you can imagine, it's a very difficult thing for the House and Senate member that were appointed to the council from the legislative side. It's difficult. It's a very hard process. It's a very hard thing to coordinate the meeting days, get all of the information, the people there to provide background information on testimony, on the bills themselves, coordinate everything. So what we've done is given them 2 additional people, one from the minority, one from the majority. And actually, I think it's kind of clever. We've actually given them the youngest people on the majority and the minority side so that they can more easily relate to the ages of the council members, and it may be a way that they can also learn some of the process themselves because it's going to be new for them as well. So that should give additional help to the legislative co-chair. We've also limited the scope, and this was an issue I think that was brought up in the hearing. And the purpose was to just kind of take a step back and let the council refocus as to what their purpose is. It by no means was designed so that it would not be allowed to be enlarged in the future, but it was just a way of saying, look, these are the items that would best help the legislature. Take a look at these, start looking at those bills, because this is an enormous problem for them initially, to look at 1,000 bills and have difficulty deciding which ones are important and which ones they need to get information for. So the idea of limiting the scope, at least initially, seemed like it made a great deal of sense. There's a couple of other things this does, but I know in the interest of time, I think what I'll do is leave my testimony there. If there are questions that you have, I'm certainly willing to tell you what the committee did to make this project better.
Well, thank you, Representative. I appreciate you coming in and providing more info for us. Does anybody have any questions for Representative Hill?
Oh, well, you did in the beginning here.
All right.
One other thing that may be of importance is that we've tried to offset I think this will prove out to be very important, offset the terms of these individuals so that there will never be a time when all of them are new and they have to try to gain that institutional knowledge. So that we've set it up so that, half would come in each year so that there would be an ongoing continuation, I guess, of the work that was done in the previous year. I think that's going to be helpful. So, as I say, I've worked with these groups for a long time. Interestingly enough, I've seen lately other groups popping up and coming and testifying. You may have had them as well in this committee. I've seen 3 other youth groups that came and testified. Funnily enough, Legislative Youth Advisory Council didn't testify in those bills. One was in transportation that dealt with parents smoking in a car while the youth was in the car. And that didn't somehow hit the highlights of the Youth Advisory Council. It seemed like a logical bill for that to come up. So I'm not really sure where the council fits in, but it does seem that there are other groups that are filling this purpose along the way as well.
Thank you, Representative. Further questions? All right.
Seeing none.
I appreciate you coming in.
My vice chair is also here, who chaired the committee, the subcommittee that created the amendment. She may have other items that would be of interest to the committee. I'm not sure, but
all right. Thank you.
I wanted to let you know that she is here for you as well.
Excellent. You have anything you want to add? I'll give you a minute if you do.
Thank you. I'm Representative Vanessa Sheehan. I represent Hillsborough 43, the town of Milford, and I did chair the subcommittee for the LIAC bill. And we had the chairman who currently serves on the LIAC council there. We had the prime sponsor of the bill, and we had the youngest member of the majority party and minority party in the House, all to get information on how we can make this council better and successful. And at the end of that work session, we did come up with a bipartisan amendment to the bill that passed our committee unanimously and then passed on consent in the House. One of the concerns from the council was how do we get the word out there about our council, you know, to get members. And so, you know, the amendment includes help from the DOE, promoting the council. It also includes putting a page on the General Court website to promote the council. We also have language in there for the council to study the Constitution and as well as the oath of office. We also have wording in there to cover the 10 counties in New Hampshire, to cover that broad demographic area. And, you know, we thought that the council was on board with this. We had several members there at the executive session supporting it. And so we hope that you will as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? All right. Seeing none. Appreciate you both coming in. Senator Altshuler, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes if you want to talk about the amendment you have. I'm not going to vote on this today because Senator Carson had to leave, and I'd like all of us to have input.
Oh, she's gone?
Yeah, she had to go.
Oh, okay.
She had to be in the House, but I'd like to
You want
give
to hold then? You want to wait?
If you want to talk about your amendment, you can, or you can wait till next time. I'll give you that option.
No,
How's that?
we can wait till
Okay.
next time. That's
All right,
fine.
we can do that.
Yeah.
We will put that one on hold till next time. The only other, I have an amendment that you should have for 1622. And you can take yeah, you'll have it to work on again. We'll work on it next time. You should, hopefully you have it in front of you. Let me just put this back.
Yes.
So I'll give you that to you now. You can
1622.
review it, and we can have a discussion on it next time we're in exec session. But that way you'll at least have it to look at. It's one that I believe covers the issues that we identified during the hearing. I have gone over already the schedule for next week. We'll have 6 bills on.
Okay.
If we have any time after, will you, Senator Perkins Coker, will you be here next week?
I will be here.
Okay, awesome.
I've made arrangements to be here, yes. Then
All
I'm
right,
sure
if you're here and we have time, if we're all here, we'll attempt to do some more
we
executive next
probably
week
should
after the
try
hearings.
to, yeah.
Time permitting?
Yeah.
With that, I'll take a motion to come out of exec session.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor? Aye. And we are done for today, and thank you all.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your patience today.
Hey, listen,
The stitches are out, so I'll be here.
we have a lot of bills to get through. We'll do it. Thank you.
Listening to the YouTube in the car.